Fellow members of NUSS, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Ita, and I'm happy to be the moderator for tonight's webinar on the future of Singapore, political leaders of the future. We are very privileged to have with us Ms. Tin Pei Ling, who is our fellow NUS alumni, and she has also served 2 terms as Member of Parliament for McPherson SMC. Before we start off tonight's event, perhaps we could do a quick poll to see who we have in the audience, given that this is a virtual event and we can't see everyone's faces. So let's start off with a poll. Jocelyn, could you pull out the poll? I think it's the other questions on the what's your age and whether you're a first-time voter. Yep. So I'd like to find out which age band do you belong to, as well as whether you are a first-time voter, an experienced voter, or a non-voter. Maybe we do a quick 30 seconds poll and then let's have the results in 30 seconds. Okay, here we have the results. Majority of the audience are age 50 and above, and 9 in 10 of us attending tonight's session are all veteran voters who have voted in past elections before. We have a small minority who are first-time voters. So I guess that will shape how we frame tonight's discussion. So perhaps I'll start. Before tonight's event, I was actually counting how many years I've known you, Pei Ling. I've counted, and to be exact, it's I think 16 years.
Oh, it hasn't been that long.
I remember, back then I was still in secondary school and you were probably in university, and we were both active organizing youth events. I think since then, we've both grown. I've grown in weight and waistline, but I guess I've also seen you grown in terms of, progressing from a passionate, eloquent, vocal youth leader. You've gone on to contest your first elections when you were 27 years old. And subsequently, from a political novice, you have been actively walking the ground, forging strong bonds with your residents. And now I guess you can be called a very seasoned veteran politician. Apart from that, you are also a successful career woman. You are the CEO of Business China. And I recall the last time I saw you before COVID was at the Asia House event where you were actively out there, cultivating ties for Singaporean companies. And not forgetting the fact that you are also a mother of 2. So, more than 10 years have passed. Maybe you would like to tell us what in your life, what in your mind has changed and what has not changed. So let's keep the motherhood statements, which I guess our audience are not interested in, but let's perhaps share your reflections in your political journey. Tell us the true story of Tin Pei Ling.
Thank you, Ita. You have been most kind. Well, I am a mother, so some of my statements will concern motherhood. Nonetheless, let me try to share as much as I can and as candidly as I can with our audience today. And of course, first of all, I'd like to say hi to everyone who's online. Thank you for joining. Well, Ita has framed it very nicely. I do feel that over the past 10 years, I've grown a lot, and I have grown along with the people in McPherson. And to me, I think what has changed, I suppose, given what happened given what happened when I first started, when I was first fielded in 2011, clearly, I think one thing that I'm a lot more cautious with how I communicate. I think back then when I was first fielded, I was in my 20s, and I suppose back then I still had that, I would like to think, a youthful vibe. So a lot of things that that went through my mind. So sometimes when I portray myself, I might have not been as careful. But by being careful, it doesn't mean that I'm fake as well. I think what I would have seen myself, change is in terms of the way I maybe articulate my ideas or what I mean. I try to be more careful so that I leave lesser room for misinterpretation. Now, that being said, of course, it's not always easy because, in this, especially now in the digital age, there's so much information, there's a explosion of information, there are a lot of things going around. So sometimes to be able to communicate what your ideas are clearly and succinctly is not that easy. Most recently, I think there was a bit of a little bit of a hoo-ha over what I said in Parliament, although it was taken out of context. But I think that highlights, the importance of being very clear in communication. But I think in terms of what I think also have changed. Actually, there's one more thing that is actually very important that I think have changed, but not changed in the way the substance of it, but how deeply I feel about things. So when I first started in my 20s, back then I said that I'm very passionate about issues concerning seniors, elderly, youth, public health, mental health. These I still feel very strongly about. But actually today, I feel it even stronger, especially with COVID-19, especially with, over the past 10 years, the people I've met, the cases I have been, trying to help resolve. It actually makes it a lot salient for me. Why do I say that? So, I always say that, it will be most wonderful if I can help someone in their life. Regardless of how big or how small it is, if I can help someone and make a positive difference, that's great. I think we can all attest to that. But during this COVID-19, when actually a lot of people are affected, every day I have so many emails, people writing into me. And some of them are, you can sense that sense of desperation and anxiety that, they have lost their jobs or that they have lost their income and they still have families to feed. And that sense of, I would say it's like they're terrified. They're terrified about, what next might they have to lose, before they cannot keep it together again. So that gets to me. And so, during this period of time, I really try my very best, whether it's to direct them to the information source or the website or help them through the process, or just really just mastering resources at the local community level to help plug gaps. To me, I think it's very important. If anything, this is the time that we must step in and help. And, sometimes when they, when the help is given and they feel a bit more relief and they come back to tell me that, I do feel very, I won't say pleased, but I do feel a sense of fulfillment. So for example, I shared this example before, Madam Kek. She just found a job just before circuit breaker. But because of COVID-19, because of circuit breaker, she lost the job. And there was no money. Then how? But thankfully, for us within the community, we managed to get the funding. And we said that, you have some skills, why don't you put it to good use? How about make some reusable mask? And then we'll give you an allowance so that during this period of time, you have something that you can rely on top of other things that we were offering her. And at the same time, the mask can be used for vulnerable families so that they have a protection as well. And after that, when she wrote back to me, some time passed, and then she wrote back to me and she said that in her darkest hour, I gave her hope, and that in Chinese she said, 给了她一口饭吃. I sat there and I teared. And because to me, that's really what this whole thing is about, helping people. It's not about just words in parliament or, in webinars like that. It's actually about really how do you help people's lives in their darkest hour. How do you help them get up again? How do you give them that hope? And this drives me. And so, looking back, I would say that there are things that have changed and not changed. My values, I don't think has changed. It's always about helping other people, and politics is about people's lives. It cannot be about anything else. It's about people's lives today and tomorrow. that sense of mission has actually deepened a lot. More so with COVID-19, of course, as a mother, I feel things differently. Otherwise, that those values that guide me, that motivation, never changed. Yeah. So to Ita, so I think for me, these are what I think are the most significant changes, or or things that have remained constant.
So it's certainly not easy to be an MP, and in this journey of helping people, maybe you could tell us what's the toughest decision that you have to make, over the past 10 years.
To be honest, thinking back, I'm not sure what would constitute a tough decision. I suppose at a personal level, there were things that I had to give. I remember when after I got elected in 2011, I was really contemplating hard about quitting my job. I mean, at that point in time in my 20s, I think I'm like any other young person in their 20s. Starting out at work, I was at Ernst & Young. There were so many things that going on in the life, and thinking about climbing the corporate ladder as well. Well, I mean, granted, there were times when I think about what's the meaning of what I do. But a lot of things are, I mean, it's still a time where I'm still trying to get a hold of what I how I want to move forward. And it was an exciting time. But after getting elected, I reflected and I thought to myself, people gave me this chance. They trusted me. It's a very sacred responsibility. I need to focus, because as a newcomer, as someone who's new to the political scene, as someone new to McPherson, I must do a good job. And of course, given how challenging it was in 2011, all the more I need to do a good job. Firstly, to the residents who did not, abandon me, or who did not give up on me, I have to 对得起他们. And also for other young people who are considering taking a huge step, whether to step forth to serve, or in their own career, or in their own things that they do, I don't want to be labeled as I see, it's just another young person, cannot last, cannot do it. And so I felt that I had to do a good job. I have to do the right thing and responsible thing. So it took me quite a while. Then I decided that I'll leave my job to focus on McPherson and of course in Parliament. Well, of course, today one may ask, then why am I back in the working team? That also took me quite some time. So getting out of work and then getting back to work actually were decisions that I really deliberated very long and hard. After I gave birth to my first son, so that was in 2015, and then I think by 2016, 2017, after he started to go to school, to me, by then, things are more stable within McPherson, within Parliament. I've got a better grip on things. I've already established proper systems, proper processes. My team was also have also grown in strength. And after my son went to school, I thought that I had some capacity, and that I wanted to also develop myself. I think it is quite important for me, even as an MP, to develop myself so that I can be better. Better in terms of the resources, in terms of how I can, organize and serve in McPherson, but also in Parliament, because not forgetting there's also the Parliament portion. And if I don't get out there and stay connected to the broader market and what's going on, then I feared that what I could contribute in terms of that discourse, that debate, may be quite limited. And so from there, I was fortunate to have some opportunities, and I went into a tech firm, a Singapore tech firm. And I thought that was very exciting, because it was a tech firm trying to transform. It was actually a firm doing something else, doing smart cards, and then they were trying to transform. and they have successfully transformed now. So that was back then. And then shortly after, of course, I had the opportunity to join Business China, which is a non-profit organization, I would say founded by our founding Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. And to me, Business China is a platform that where we try to cultivate bilingual, bicultural Singaporean talents so that we are able to strengthen ourselves as the economic and cultural bridge between China and the world. So I mean, I can go on a little bit more, but basically to me, in this capacity, I'm contributing to Singapore in a different way, and I find meaning in this. So these are, I think, the two toughest decisions, because either or, there were consequences. The first one had personal impact, but the second one was, I would say, more in terms of how can I explain to my residents and Singaporeans, why did I make this decision? So it wasn't easy for me, but I think on hindsight, I think I made the right decisions at those points in time. And as long as I am able to contribute to McPherson, to Singapore specifically, I think I'm happy to be able to do it.
Having made these decisions, do you have any major regrets over the past 10 years?
I won't say regrets. I mean, on hindsight, of course, there are many things that I could have done better. So, I mean, if I always have to look back, and I'll say in 2011, maybe I shouldn't have said something. Maybe I should have said it in a different way. Maybe, you know, there were many things, including, you know, maybe I should have just asked all my friends to stop, you know, posting my photos, because there were things that well, on people's blog and my husband's Facebook, everything lah. So, but I mean, what could have, should have, would have, life just doesn't happen that way. I can't keep looking back and think about it. So I think the best thing is to just focus on the now and tomorrow, and how can I be better. And I mean, one thing that I also realize is that you know, after a while, people may not really remember so much about what happened in the past. They want to see what you have done so far, what are you doing now, and what do you have in store for the future. And I think that's the most important. And I guess everyone deserves to have opportunities and chances. I hope I can say that. Yeah. So yeah. So I think I should stop looking back so much, but also looking at now and future. What can I do to contribute?
So perhaps looking into the future, let's talk about tonight's topic, which is political leaders of the future that we want, you know, to steward Singapore into the next decade or and beyond. So perhaps we want to invite more audience participation, and let's bring out the poll. Jocelyn, we can bring out the poll. So we want to find out from the audience who are with us here tonight, which of the following are the most important leadership qualities you look out for in a politician? So you can select multiple options, whether someone who is visionary, who is humble, who is passionate, decisive, empathetic, most importantly, honest, integrity, loyalty, having confidence, being able to adapt, resilience. So that's the first question. What are the leadership qualities we desire in a politician? The second question, now that we are in the GE season, we want to find out which of the following are the most important factors that will determine your vote for a candidate or a party at the upcoming elections. Whether is it the education background, prior work accomplishments, whether someone has been walking the ground, have been attending parliament, what kind of speeches are being made, can manage the town council or not, you know, can represent Singapore internationally, the party's brand, track record, manifesto and vision for Singapore. So feel free to, you know, select your choices, and we can perhaps take 15 seconds to, you know, conclude the poll. now we have the results, and clearly integrity is the top quality that everyone expects in the political landscape. And the second most important quality that everyone listed was empathy, being able to connect with the electorate.
No, I think it's visionary.
Oh, sorry, visionary.
Yeah.
Having the vision and being able to take Singapore forward. And the third one is being empathetic. And for the second question, what determines your vote for a party or a candidate would be whether someone has, walked the ground sufficiently, whether someone who can represent Singapore on the international stage, and candidates' performance in Parliament. Pei Ling, would you want to comment on some of these results of the poll first?
Sure. Well, I think in terms of the qualities that I see that people have polled, I think integrity is something that I agree, but my own personal choice is actually, I would call it compassionate. Whereas here, I think maybe it links to empathy more. Integrity is important because you want to make sure that this person, is consistent and that will not say something and do something behind the back. So there's a high element of trust. So I think this one we can all agree. But to me, I think what is most important is being compassionate. The reason is this: when we come forward to serve, the motivation, that 初衷, that motivation, the reason for doing this is important. And that at the end of the day, to me, politics is about people's lives. It's not about yourself. It has to be about the people's lives. It has to be about the country's destiny. And so when you talk about being compassionate, it's about caring about other people so that you always place others before you. And in Chinese, I like to look at this as between 大爱 and 小爱. Okay, broadly translated, then it's a big love and small love. That's a bit of a literal translation. But what it means is that when you talk about big love, it's about taking yourself out of this. How do you transcend above yourself and do things or make decisions that will benefit the masses, the society, the greater good? And the small love is really about how do you help those immediately around you or those people who you care to maybe be happy and to make them to take care of their well-being. So regardless of whether it's the 大爱 or 小爱, I think the most important thing is that you care about. It's really about caring about other people. And as a national leader, I think they have to have 大爱. They need to be able to make difficult decisions, but for the longer term good, for the majority good. The 小爱, leave it to the individuals or even the MPs, all of us. We can do our part to help achieve that. So, but my point is that at the end of the day, what really drives at the core, I should say the core, is really about compassion. It's about, making sure that people's lives do improve. And so I think that's most important. With that being settled, if we look at the, in recent times, whether it's COVID-19 or even just before COVID-19, we know that the world is, changing, is transforming. There are many things that are happening around the world, whether it's US, China, whether it's about anti-globalization generally speaking, or even, Singapore as we try to transform to be able to go the next step. These are uncertain times, and then made worse by COVID-19, of course. So in such an instance, when there's so much uncertainty, then the leaders will need to have a strong vision, because people will look to you to have that picture, that end point that we should go towards. Doesn't mean that we'll all have to have the same we have to agree on the same thing, but that vision, that end goal must be clear. So someone with a strong vision will be important. And thereafter, actually, I thought that is to be decisive and just go. If you are wishy-washy, then it's very hard. And so coupling with that is also the ability to execute, to implement. It's easy to talk about grand plans. It's easy to say highfalutin, use highfalutin words and describe something really beautiful. But in the end, who can do it? It's also about the ability to execute. So these, I think, would be very important, especially looking ahead. I don't think it's going to get any easier. There's a US-China tension will last for some time more. COVID-19 pandemic, vaccine is still being, being researched into. It's going to still take some time, and even after COVID-19, there could be other viruses for all we know. So, what's next? And if you look at, disruptions, last time, technology, maybe every disruption maybe takes about 40, 50 years, then one time. So one in a lifetime, maybe you see one, maximum two disruptions. But as technology progresses, it gets faster and faster. The Google, I think, I read somewhere that it took about 10 years to become a unicorn, change the way people consume information on internet. And then now, look at the mobile platform apps. Less than 10 years, maybe 4-5 years, and it can totally change the game. And so you can really imagine that in a person's lifetime, there'll be so many disruptions that they have to go through, and it keeps getting challenged. So Singapore, overall, as we gear ourselves up for the fourth industrial revolution, for the digital future, perhaps there will be 5th, 6th, 7th coming up. We need to be able to be very clear about where we are going, how we are going to do it, and we need to act fast. In fact, now as the world changes, there may be talents who will be displaced. And also, how do we position our people well? How do we equip them with the right skills and right knowledge to really leverage on the opportunities now? So all these you really need to train up fast. Earlier this year, I think EDB announced that we had, despite COVID-19, we managed to still attract $13 billion of investment to Singapore. But if you look at the type of opportunities coming to Singapore, it's very much future oriented. Are our people ready? Can we be ready fast enough? Because if you're not fast enough, then we may still lose these investments and opportunities, and then we'll all be for the poorer. So the speed, the ability to execute, very important. So that's the first part. And then the second part, I think more and more people are expecting a lot more of, whether you call them politicians or leaders, are expecting a lot more. Not only must you be intellectual, must speak intelligently, thoughtfully in parliament, but also on the ground. And, and to me, how I interpret this is this, and I agree with this. How I interpret this is this. When you formulate policies or when you pass legislation, when you make a decision in parliament, sometimes even outside of parliament, you have to ground that decision somewhere. You cannot just, like I said, politics is about people's lives. So you cannot just make decisions that in the end will bring destruction to other people's lives. So how do you know what you are deciding on has a real impact and a good impact on people's lives? It's really through ground interaction. And so by walking the ground through meet the people session, through house visits, through dialogues, you know what people are going through, what their aspirations are, what their fears are. And hopefully through that process of understanding the ground, when we pass a policy or a law, legislation in parliament, it is, it is grounded that it will have a real and positive impact on people's lives. Likewise, sometimes we also have meetings and make decisions outside of parliament. Similarly, you need to know your ground. You cannot be devolved from that. Otherwise, I don't think we are a good leader. The leader must bring the people along, must have the people at heart. So all in all, coming back, compassionate, being, having people at the core of whatever we do and think about is important. And so I'm not surprised by the results because I do subscribe to that as well. So yeah, that's a very long answer from me. Over to you.
Yeah, I actually, I noticed that, like you mentioned earlier, visionary is actually one of the top results, that the audience had chosen. And I think we all would agree that the first generation of leaders that Singapore had were certainly visionary. I know that, all the party manifestos are not out yet, maybe you can share with us what is your vision for Singapore. How do you envision, the future of Singapore to be? Because I think, nowadays we don't have a clear view of, what sort of vision the 4G leaders are articulating.
Well, for the party one, I will let them launch it when they launch it. But I will say what I think is important. Yeah. For me at this point, I think I have different roles. And one of the biggest thing that, that is on top of my mind is really, as a mother, I have two young sons, one 5 years, coming to 5, one coming to 2. I think for like even my generation, pretty much set. I won't say set, but we roughly know what's ahead already. But for them, they are still so young. And I often think about, what kind of legacy do we want to leave them? What kind of world do we want to leave them? And to me, I think first and foremost, I hope that when they grow up, they will be able to, be in a world where they are, it's full of opportunities. I'm not sure whether I should say equal opportunities, but I definitely would want to avail to them, not just my sons, but and all the peers, as many opportunities as there are possible. And so that even if they ever fall down or at any point in time they fail, that they are able to come back again because there are opportunities for them. Whether, they may be in school, they didn't do well in one exam, or that later on in life they didn't do well in their first job, second job, then I hope that they can still be able to, pick themselves up and try again and thrive. So the ability to, or the availability of opportunities, I think, is very important, and that people will be able to get into these positions by merit. I still believe in meritocracy because this is how my parents, myself, this is what brought us to where we are today. So I still hope that the future of Singapore, the future that my sons and their peers will grow up in, will be meritocratic. That as long as you have the skills, the knowledge, as long as you're willing to put in the effort, you should be able to lead a happy and fulfilling life. You should still have that beautiful future that you deserve and the opportunity. Also, one more thing is that, especially now as a mother, I feel even more that we shouldn't have a single definition of success. That there must be different pathways to this, and none of us are perfect. None of us. And so one question that I also ask myself is imperfection bad? Should we penalize someone based on imperfection? Maybe this person never scored 100 marks in the exam, but so what? Maybe this person is good in other things. So so it's also about embracing diverse talents. How can we help them, really develop that potential and have that stage to flaunt their skills and strengths? So this would be the desired future for my son. But to reach there, to be able to get there, there are various things that we need to do right. So first and foremost, I think education. We need to make sure that everyone has access to education, and that it's also about evolving the education, what's being taught, the whole system, the whole pedagogy, so that it keeps up with time. And I've said this before, in the IPS commentary as well as in Parliament a few times. I think that in terms of language, for example, we should add one more language, and that's computer language. I think this is the bare minimum. At least get people to have a certain intuitive way of thinking about things and understanding how things work. So that, for example, education has to continue to be readily available, accessible to all, and that it has to be good, and that it has to imbue in our children that sense of international perspective, that global perspective. It's not just good enough in the ABCs or the 1, 2, 3s, but to be savvy, to be globally savvy. That's one. And then economy. Last time we always hear about economy, and then we are wondering, is it just growing economy at all costs, but for what, to what end? This point actually, I'm not saying that it is the end or the only thing that we should pursue, but if you look at the current circumstances now, especially in this pandemic, it's really not just an abstract concept. It's not just because it sounds nice, economy, big word, but it's about people's lives and people's jobs and people's dreams. In McPherson, I've heard so many, almost all the appeals that I have, come across, it all comes back to the same thing. It's about that job. It's about the job that can give them the income to support their family. It's about that job that can help them to launch their career into the dream that they have always dreamt of. So because of COVID-19, we know that in Singapore, economy contracted, unemployment went up, and this may continue for a while. So it is really not just pursuing economy for the sake of it. It is really because it is about people's lives, people's jobs, people's future, the dream. And so I think we will need to continue to make sure that we have sound fundamentals in our economy. So I think we have the Committee of Future Economy. We need to make sure that our people are prepared for that. And so to me, these two things are now very important. But on top of that, overlaying this at the society level, at the people level, psychology is also very important. In the end, as a society, we need to believe in each other. We need to care about one another. We need to have a sense of shared destiny, basically. And so that thing is actually not so easy to build. So whether you call it the Singapore conversation or no matter how you term it, it's really how do you bring people together and have that same buy-in to what you are trying to sell to people. So that I think is a process that requires a lot of trust in each other, trust in the government. I think we talked about social compact in some other conversations before we've heard it. But this trust is actually important. Otherwise, you can try to transform the industries, you can have grand plans, but if nobody is going to cooperate with you, then it's going to be difficult. Even in this pandemic, COVID-19, if let's say companies don't play their part, or people don't, agree to give and take a little bit, then it would have been very challenging for us to overcome this and emerge stronger, or to be ready for that digital future that we talk about. Yeah, so very long, but these are what are in my mind right now.
Yeah, perhaps shifting gears, in realizing that the sort of vibrant Singapore that we hope to see, perhaps let's take some question from the floor. Pertaining to tonight's topic about the political landscape in Singapore, and whether we should have a more plurality in the system, more opposition representation, whether there's a level playing field that we are seeing today. So I think there's quite a lot of interest from the questions that are coming in about the hype about the current GE. So maybe we'll take a couple of questions. So I saw an interesting one by Mr. Chandra Mohan, whether you have run for opposition, and if asked to for first time, if not, why not? So I've put it up.
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. No, I would not have gone to the opposition. Well, there are a few reasons. One is that I think that if you want to choose a political party, from the onset, we need to believe in the values and the philosophy of the party. This is, I think, the most important, because this is not like you're choosing what's for lunch for that day, but it's really about the future of the country. Is about people's lives. So if you want to support a cause, you better do your homework up front and believe in it before you decide to do it, to join. And for me, why do I choose PAP? I think I've shared this before, but I will also share it again here. First of all, of course, looking back on my own family experience, my parents didn't, I mean, when they were young, they lived in attached houses. I think this is a common Singapore story. They didn't finish primary school. They had it very tough. My mom come from a single parent family. Only my grandmother raised the whole family. Uh, my father, every day he has to, go to school. But if he loses that 20 cent, then he has to walk to school. And then every morning he has to wake up really early and work till late night. But because the of the philosophy of PAP, meritocracy, because of that resolve to just build up the Singapore, they have been able through their own effort, uh, manage to raise our family and bring us to where we are today. And of course, to me, after I started volunteering since university days, I see what is on the ground. I see people week in, week out, almost daily, even sometimes, just serving the community, helping people, just being there. It's a thankless effort for them, for the volunteers. I mean, one can say that the MP, you are elected, you're expected to do it. But for the volunteers, the activists, they, 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 I mean, they do it because they believe in it. And, and they do it because they believe in the leader as well. So to me, when I see all of this, it inspires me. And when I went to NPS, every single case very meticulously looked into. Of course, we can't solve everything, but that sincerity is there. I've seen how, this family, the mother was bring, the one night, the mother came with her children because her husband was a drug addict, so he's absent. And, she came to ask for help. And the kids were crying because they were so hungry. And she only had enough money to take a bus home with them. Immediately, we split ourselves up. I remember I was still a student and I was volunteering. And we split ourselves up. So some of us decided to, do the appeal letters. Some took the kids and the mother to go and have a proper meal. And then actually, the Dr. Vivian was there and he was very supportive. I'm not sure whether I should say this, but immediately he took out of his own pocket to just help them because it's late at night. All the other financial assistance can only kick in like the next day. So, but that no questions asked. Let's just help them first. To me, was impactful. And after that, there are other stories, but to me that was impactful, and I believe in it. So to me, this is a leader who serves with his heart, and this is a party that cares about people. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But I think that sincerity is most important. To me, a leader, I may not agree with you all the time, but as long as I know that you're not doing this for yourself, that you are doing this for the right reason, I'm prepared to give you my support and see how we can do things together for the better. So this is how I see things. So to me, because of what I saw, what I experienced, I decided that PAP was the party for me. And to this day, I still believe in it. And I want to continue to, create that future that I believe in.
So certainly we are very clear about your choice of political party that, the political party of your choice. Perhaps then, what is the ideal size of opposition that should be in parliament?
Well, I'm not sure whether there is an ideal size. I know that by law we can have up to 12, right? So, but this is a democracy. Even if people are skeptical about this, but this is a democracy. We take every election very seriously, and people can choose for themselves who they want to place in parliament. So basically, if let's say one day, if really more than 50%, if the ruling party PAP loses more than 50%, then another party will come in. I guess it can go as many as you want or as little as you want, but it's the power, the choice is in people's hands. I think there's no other answer better than that. Actually, the choice is in people's hands. You all decide.
Yep, there's a follow-up question from that's connected to the earlier one, and this is again from Mr. Chandra Mohan.
Yes.
It's about, do you feel that the election system is fair to the opposition? And if you were in the opposition, again assuming you were, what improvements would you recommend to make it fairer and more equitable?
Well, I think for one, the system, I think to be honest, I think it's quite fair because if you compare with other countries, there's no cap. Other countries had no cap on the election spending, but we have. And why do I say so? If you think about it, being the incumbent, honestly, I think it's not that difficult to get the resources that we need in terms of financing or even manpower, for example. Opposition, if what they have been saying, by what they have been saying is that they haven't been able to raise as much funds, perhaps, and stuff like that. Then, if that's the case, then one would imagine that during a campaign they will be disadvantaged, right? But in Singapore, the rule is that for every constituency, the contesting parties, there's a cap on how much you can spend. So based on the voter population in the constituency, I think it's up to $4 per voter, the cap. So that basically clips the wing of a supposedly more resourced party. And so I think that in that sense, basically levels that playing field there. This is just an example. And also, if you look at this media, I know there are people who may be skeptical about this, but I would say that their conscious effort to level this. Allow me to share my thoughts on this. I think the internet is quite free for all. So depending on who you support or what you believe in, you're very free to propagate your ideology, and it's you don't really need a lot of people or a lot of funding to do that. If you have a very compelling vision and ideology, people will naturally gravitate to you and believe in you and help you campaign online. That's one. And then if you look at, for example, now again back to the most recent pandemic, COVID-19, in terms of physical campaigning, which is supposedly the ruling party's conventional strength, now we can't do it. We can't do it as much, I should say. Not that we can't totally, but it won't be as much. And there will be national broadcast for all the contenders in that sense, for all the candidates. And so that every candidate will have access to the national population. So I think that's another example. And of course, within Parliament, as we know, that there has been changes tweaked such that there is a minimum guaranteed number of non-ruling party representatives. So of course, if more than 12 are elected, then you have more. But if you actually have less than 12, then you can top it up so that you can have at least 12. So I think as far as possible, there have been deliberate efforts to try to make the system fairer. And so I feel that as a democracy, we're not too bad. We're not too bad. So of course, these are my opinions. Happy to hear from the audience.
Don't you think that the idea of having NCMPs is anti-democratic because you're having the losers in Parliament?
Well, I guess it depends on where you stand. I think it's actually not a bad idea because if we are talking about balance, or recently I heard this word contrast, and so if you want to have a greater diversity of voices, then if you just purely wait for just based on the election results to decide who can get into Parliament, then we may not have that. We may have compromised that diversity. But at least with the NCMP, granted that they didn't win the election, but at least they have a chance to still come in and offer their opinions, you know, to give that diversity that people want. Because no matter what, even if they have lost, there is still a group of Singaporeans who did vote for them. And that's why they are there as NCMP. So I think it's not a bad idea. I think it's unique to Singapore, I would say.
So related to that question, we have one by Mr. Francis Pavi. He asked if how do you ensure accountability in the PAP government, you know, instead of, you know, just anyhow passing laws with the supermajority that the PAP used to have. Yeah.
Used to have. Well,
because I mean, Parliament has dissolved, so used to have.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, it's again, I think people, your votes, you know, that's how you keep the PAP in check. This is what democracy is about. If people feel that the PAP's policies and laws are unfair, unreasonable, are just not tenable for the future, or that the leaders are not right, the vote is yours. The choice is yours. And so I think that really is the best way of keeping us accountable. And notwithstanding that, the debates in Parliament are publicly televised. This are available for those who don't realize. Actually, the Hansa is on Parliament website. The television, the video is on CNA website, so you can actually tune in to watch. So the opposition, whether it's the elected opposition MPs or the NT MPs or even the NMPs, they question. And even for us as ruling party MPs, actually no, I should. I'm not. Parliament has dissolved, so I'm no longer an MP now. Sorry. But basically, we also question. So with that whole to and fro, this is how we ensure that you know, every piece of legislation or even policy is being thoroughly discussed. The trade-offs, the considerations behind this would be, you know, in that sense articulated within Parliament, a public platform. So I think these are important aspects of our system that allow transparency, that allow accountability, that allow diversity of voices to be heard. And so that the decisions that we make is not you know, just because I have a super majority, I can do whatever I want. But that it forces us to still, you know, think through very carefully and, you know, and consult widely before it gets passed. So I think to me, this is, you know, my take on this question.
We have one more question here from Dave Ng. He asked if, you know, you have been frequently compared to Nicole Seah during the 2011 election. She has disappeared, and I think in today's news, she's likely to be fielded as a Workers' Party candidate. So she's coming back this election. What are your thoughts 9-10 years later?
Well, I welcome her back. It's been quite a while. I'm glad that she's doing well now. I think I saw the video. She's looking quite radiant. So I mean, as in the end, we are Singaporeans. I wish everyone well. In the election, it's also about a contest of ideas. So in Parliament, I mean, we fight for that chance to be in Parliament to serve our people. Because maybe our ideology, our values are just different. But that's all right. We should embrace that diversity. However, that doesn't mean that, you know, outside of Parliament or outside of politics, we have to be enemies. So I'm glad to see her back. This is a democracy. This is a fair contest. May the person with the best ideas win. Regardless of where she will stand, you know, the one we don't know yet, but regardless of where she will stand, the local candidate will have to do his or her best to make sure that his or her idea will stand out. Likewise, for all who are participating in the coming general election.
So building on that, you know, 10 years ago, you contested McPherson, and here's a question on how would you grade your performance for your work in McPherson constituency? Any areas which you could have done better? So if you were to give yourself a report card after 10 years, what grade would you give yourself?
Let me think. I would give myself maybe a B plus. It's kind of. I think I don't think I've been perfect in how I could do a lot more. I still think I could do a lot more. But I also think that over the past 10 years with my team, we have done our very best. And so we have, currently, if we look at the care for our seniors, we have, ensured that the heart environment is as safe and as accessible as we can as of now. So whether it's through upgrading projects, whether it's through the some of the programs that we have, we've tried to ensure that it's elderly friendly. In terms of programs, we have introduced the McPherson Care Fund. We have introduced various active aging and as well as care programs to take care of the basic needs or the immediate needs of our seniors. We are also building up network to provide that support to them, that last mile support for them, so that they can avoid isolation. Likewise for families and other segments of our population. So I would say that looking back, we have made progress. I would like to say that McPherson today is a lot more vibrant, a lot safer in terms of the heart environment, about getting around, a lot more accessible. And so this to me is something that we take pride in. Doesn't mean that we are already there, but we do take pride in what we have, and we'll continue to build on this. It's a never-ending thing, and looking ahead, there are still other areas that I will want to work on, but I will not say it now because I want to leave it for later. But yeah, so I would say that I would like to give myself a B plus, which is not too bad by NUS standard usually when we were still in school, right? So that there's still a bit of a room for improvement, and we'll continue to do our best in that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good grade. We have another question that is, I guess, quite interesting as well. What would you do when your personal position is different from the party or the government? Have you come across any of these instances, and maybe you can share more?
Well, I think for this, internally we would have given our feedback and opinion. I remember to give an example, let's say, I remember in 2012 with the white paper, the population white paper, I actually voiced my concerns about some of the recommendations that were put forth. And even for recently, the CareShield Life, the premiums. Remember the gender between male and female. Actually, there's a bit of a disparity. It's not equal, even though if you're of the same age. And then I also voiced out in Parliament that I think it's not fair, because for women, firstly in the older generation, women tend to stay at home more. So in terms of the income that they are able to earn, and therefore that affects the CPF savings, for example, wouldn't be as strong as say their male counterpart, fellow male Singaporeans. And so if we ask them to pay a little bit more, it can be a bit challenging. Not everyone have very supportive family members that they can rely on, let's put it that way. So that's a bit challenging. Also, when we look at having an insurance is about pooling the risk, pooling the resource, so that we can help those who are in greater need. So if by that line of thought, then shouldn't we just have on par premium? So it's again in line with sharing that risk, sharing that responsibility. But I understand why it was proposed as such. because of various actual real consideration. But I did voice out in Parliament as a matter of record.
I think we have just saw in the poll, we saw that being able to represent Singapore on the international stage is one of the qualities that the audience is looking for. So there's one that's related to that. How do you assess, as a future leader, the geopolitical situation in the South China Sea and between the US and China, basically US-China rivalry? How will that impact us, and how do we respond to that?
Well, I think for this US-China tension that we see, the political leaders have already said their piece. For us, I think as Singapore, in the end, any country, doesn't matter big or small, it's really about our own national interests, the interests of our people. And so it's not about taking sides. There's no side to take. It doesn't benefit us at all. It's really about how can we make sure that for Singapore we continue to have free access of whether you call it the sea or the air. I think we need to make sure that we continue to have free access. And then also in terms of the historical context of it, the sovereignty consideration. If we go by historical consideration, how far back do we want to trace back? So I think that's something that we need to think about, because even for Singapore, we are a young nation. We don't really want to trace back to history. Really, are we our own country, or do we belong to someone else? I think that's something that we also need to think about. So for Singapore, I would say that as of now, we are trying. You can see in the narrative out there. It's really about positioning ourselves as being the bridge, connecting the world superpowers, and we have to be very careful with this, because I think borrowing the analogy of two big elephants, when they fight, we suffer. But when they are very intimate with each other, we can also suffer. So we are in a very delicate position here, and how in the end is how can we be useful to everyone? How can we be relevant? How can we be useful so that we can continue to have a space, have a voice on that global stage? And therefore, with that, it also means that we give voice and give the space to our people, our businesses when they go out there. When Singapore is being respected on the global stage, to be honest, even when our businesses or our people, when we go overseas, people will give us more weightage, will see us in a more different light. That does give us some form of advantage. But of course, it's really, the advantage could be at the beginning. If we don't have the substance, if we don't have the skills and capabilities, then, after a while, that advantage can just wear off. So for us, we also need to work very hard to make sure that we keep up with the times, that we innovate, that we transform, so that we will always be able to have, I won't say indispensable, but less dispensable, that will always be top of mind. And I think in the region, ASEAN is a fast-growing region. Before COVID-19, that's definitely the case. I think even after COVID-19, it should still be the case. So how can we position ourselves? We are a hub. There are many things coming through Singapore. We do want, investments to come here, the higher value add type of investment, so that our people can take on meaningful jobs. And at the same time, I think we also need to be prepared to go out there to the region or even beyond, to explore the opportunities in the markets there. Because as a destination market, if we look at Singapore, it won't be that big. So even businesses, I think, will have to venture beyond. People, young people especially, will have to also look beyond our own shores. And that's why now we have various programs. At the government level, there's the Global Ready Talent Program. And even for Business China, we have this Singapore-China Youth Exchange Scheme, which is basically an internship scheme. So there was an agreement signed between Singapore and China last year, but the implementation agency for Singapore, from Singapore side, is actually Business China. What we do is we send 500 youth to China every year, and likewise they will also send young people here. Through this, it's really helping our young people to know the culture in another country, to know how the operating environment works, of course, at the same time, build their own skills professionally, and also to build up their networks so that eventually when they progress in life, they are better placed to compete out there. So I think that the international perspective, that broadening of horizon is very important at this stage. So yeah, so I think it starts young and from different aspects. That's how we can help to put Singapore on the page, especially if our young people, sorry, let me just add on. If our young people go out there and intern in those companies, they are actually bringing the Singapore brand there. It helps, occupy mindshare, the Singapore mindshare overseas as well. So they are like mini ambassadors, even as they learn and benefit from those learning experience, but they themselves are also bringing that Singapore brand out there.
All right, I think we are seeing a lot of questions with regards to the latest GE. So, and I think just a couple of hours back, it was announced that Mr. Goh Meng Sing is contesting in McPherson SMC. So there's this question about your campaign strategy, whether it will be different this time around, given the current COVID restrictions, and what are your thoughts about contesting against Mr. Goh?
Well, for us, every election, every contest, every challenge, we take it very seriously. Especially so for me, because I mean, for me, it's hard-earned in McPherson. This past 10 years, what I cherish the most is really the bonds that I share with my residents. The uncles and aunties, I mean, I've got so many aunties whom I'm so familiar with. You know, when we see each other, when we hug each other, they're like my family members. And you know, I've been here for so long. These are the moments that I really hold very dear. And so I would want to hold on tight to this, McPherson that I cherish, and I want to continue to serve. So I will continue to do my best. Whether it's offline, online, it's really about helping the people of McPherson. If they have a problem, I'll do my best to solve it for them. If it's about the environment within McPherson, my team and I will also continue to work on improving that, so that everyone has got a clean and safe home to live in. And for Mr. Goh, he is a veteran politician. He has been around for so many years. He's very experienced. And I have no doubt that he is very capable. I mean, his campaign capabilities are very strong. So to me, I will take this, of course, seriously, and I will give him my very best, because I do want to defend, what I love, and that is really McPherson. I'm not kidding, because when I was at my downest moment, after going to politics, McPherson did not give up on me, and likewise, I will not give up on McPherson. And so, to me, it is important that I continue to defend this seat, and so that I can continue to serve the people of McPherson.
It's another question on here we go. There seem to be a lot of new faces on the political sphere this couple of days. So who seem to have caught your attention, be it from the PAP or the other political parties?
I think so far, based on what I've seen, I would say Nadia from PAP, because Nadia is I think so far by far the youngest. I think she's 30 years old, and she's a lawyer, young professional. I've known Nadia for some time, so I know that she is a very genuine, energetic, driven young lady who has a very big heart for the people around her, young people, women, those who are from less privileged background. And so to me, She strikes me as a very genuine person. I'm always very comfortable with her, and she can speak many languages, by the way. So I'm really happy to see her stepping forth to serve. It's not easy. It's not easy for a young lady to step forward and be, put up to public scrutiny. But at the same time, I'm so proud of her, and I wish her all the very best.
Then anyone from the opposition parties that caught your eye?
From what?
The opposition parties.
Oh, well, of course, I will pay attention to Nicole because I mean, we have been, since 2011, there was so much attention around us. Naturally, I'll pay attention to her. And I mean, I've already commented, I'm happy to see her doing well. Yeah, so, but otherwise, I think it's a fair contest, the contest of ideas, and we'll let the voters judge for themselves who they would prefer to represent them in going ahead.
I think we covered a fairly broad range of ground, talking about domestically running the constituency, representation in parliament, representing Singapore on the international stage. So there's this question here on what do you aspire to be in your political career? Do you think you have what it takes to be the future PM? Given that you tick all the check boxes that we mentioned earlier.
Oh, which check boxes? I don't think it's my. I don't set out to be a PM or anything. To me, really, seriously, when I first started, I just want to do this because I think it's meaningful. Because to be in a position to help other people, I think that to me is very fulfilling, and I feel it now. I like where I am right now to be able to serve and just speak my mind, basically. So I'm quite happy at where I am. If one day I'm asked to do more and serve, I will consider it seriously. But at this point, I'm not here to serve just because I want to be PM or anything. It's a wrong thing to think about. But at least to me, I don't think that's a right starting point or right motivation. To me, if I can help someone, 帮到一个是一个. If I can help one person, that's one life impacted. And I'm happy. And I will continue to do that because that really energizes me. I cannot emphasize how much, I cannot emphasize enough that during this period of time, I know that it's so tough and people write to me, and every time when it's a successful appeal and they come back and tell me that it's successful, I'm very happy. It really makes my day. So to me, this is my biggest motivation now.
Maybe there's an extension of that question. Maybe not Prime Minister, but if you're given a chance to lead like a ministry, what would that be, and what sort of changes you want to implement in terms of policy?
I think that I have various interests. For now, I would be very interested to see how I can support Singapore in the transformation. I won't pigeonhole myself into a specific ministry because I think that on the more macro level, the economy, we have to get it right. Because as I mentioned, economy is not just an abstract concept. It's about people's lives and people's dreams, people's livelihoods. So we need to get it right. If we miss the opportunity, we may be set back by many years, and our future generation may not be able to have the kind of opportunities that perhaps you and I have now. So to me, it's important, especially as a mother. But on the other hand, I also think that it is important that for all of us as a people, we need to be able to maintain that social cohesion, that sense of shared destiny. Otherwise, as a small country like this, if all our people don't feel for each other, that we are not aligned, then it will be very difficult to weather crisis. It will be very difficult to ask of our people to even make some sacrifices during tough times. So that 心理素质, that's emotional, psychological togetherness, I think is very important. And so from the social aspect, the community aspect is also very important. So if you ask me, I can't quite pigeonhole one particular ministry. To me, both are important. And if I can, I want to do, I want to work on these areas.
Yeah, I think you're used to juggling many hats. And I think one area which I think we didn't really discuss much is about, as a mother now, as a mother of two now, what sort of Singapore that you hope they will grow up in, for the next few decades. And would you hope for them to join politics like you in the future?
Well, if they find this their calling, then I'll be happy for them. I'll give them my support. The kind of future I actually did say this earlier. I think as a mother, I definitely hope that the future will be one that is exciting and full of opportunities. I really don't know how my sons will grow up. I mean, as a mother, of course, I would love to think the world of my son. I would like to think that he's so handsome, so intelligent. But I mean, that's just me, and I know that. But really, paring down, I really don't know what my son is going to be good at, and whether he would be, someone who can contribute, or will he be a strong person even? Will he, just a bit of a, 挫折, if let's say he doesn't do well in school, will he feel so defeated that he will give up? I don't know. But I do hope that at least, when he falls down or when he fails at some point in time, he has that chance, that opportunity to come back or do something different or do something that he's good at, so that he too in his own life can also lead a successful, fulfilling and happy life, and that he can raise his own families, pursue his own dreams, just do something that he feels fulfilling, and hopefully at the same time contribute to Singapore. So to me, a future that is promising with a lot of opportunities is quite important. But at the same time, I also hope that my sons will become caring individuals who care about the people around them, and likewise their peers as well. Because when you care about people around you, what that means is that you will not do things that is self-driven at the expense of others. That's very harmful to the 心理素质 that I talk about, that psychological, that national psychology in that sense. So when we care about people, it also means that even as we pursue economic success, we will not forget about those who are less well off. And that even if we encounter crises like this pandemic, that we will not do things that are self-serving and just heck care about other people's safety, health and safety. So I think these are very important things to me. And I also mentioned that in the end, are we embracing enough to embrace the different talents of our people, the unique quirkiness, even the idiosyncrasies of the people, or do we just think that as long as you have some imperfection, you are a bad apple and should be thrown away? I mean, these are things that I hope it's not the case, that we will be inclusive and embracing, so that going forward, it's a lot more caring, a lot more promising type of future that we have for our future generation.
I think we are running out of time. So perhaps if you have any final messages for our audience here tonight, if you want to take 30 seconds for a quick pitch, would you like to go ahead?
I won't say a pitch, but I would say this. I mean, looking ahead, I don't think the future is going to get any easier. It's going to get a lot more competitive in the global stage, especially with the superpowers, having this tussle, and anti-globalization seems to be on the rise. And so for Singapore as an open economy, I know this is something that we talk to death, but it is very true. If everyone is going to close their doors to us, then we will have very little chance. And this is going to affect our future generation. So to be able to navigate this challenging terrain will need a lot of, resolve, a strong sense of what the future will be like, a lot of resolve, and also tact. So this is something that I think we have to be very clear about. And as we get challenged as a nation, it also requires us to draw on the strength of our people. How ready are we to stand next to each other and behind Singapore? Because a Singapore without people behind it is going to have a very small voice in the global stage. But a Singapore with people unitedly and very solidly behind it, I think we can have a significant voice on the global stage. We have been, doing so well. We have been putting in so much. Our pioneers work so hard to get to where we are today. I hope that we will not let them down. And so I think it is also upon us to really take Singapore forward. Nobody is really sure of the future. I can't be sure of what the future will be like. But I know that if we give our best and, try, there is a good chance that we'll make it. But if we don't try to transform, we don't try to improve ourselves, we don't try to move, then we will always be where we are. And as people move forward, we will be regressing. So I think we need to try. And in the Singapore domestically, it is important that no matter what our differences are, that we stand with each other, that we care about each other, that we are willing to help each other succeed. And I think that would be really the best thing for us, this generation, as well as our next generation. We want to leave behind a legacy that they can be proud of as well. And so these are the things that I feel very strongly about, and that I hope that with everyone chipping in, that we can, really clarify what the future can be, and really shape, this common destiny that we share. Yeah, so with that, I also like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for giving me your time. I'm sorry I can't go through all the questions. I see there are like quite a bit. I'm so sorry I can't finish. I tend to just keep talking, but I thank you for your time, and I certainly do hope to have more opportunities to get to know all of you more.
Yeah, thank you, Pei Ling, and we wish you all the best for the upcoming elections. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this evening's webinar as well. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.